Leviticus 8 through 15. We pick up right where we left off from yesterday with the question of Leviticus. How does a righteous person approach the home of a holy God? Well, of course, that word holy is important to us here because, by the way, the word occurs in its various forms 150 times in Leviticus, showing us that this is the question. How does a person approach a holy God? What does the word holy mean is a good question, because in English it often means sinless, but in Hebrew the opposite of holy tells us what it means, because the opposite is the word for common or profane. So a holy pot, for example, would be used in the tabernacle. An unholy pot or a common pot would be used for cooking at home. So we're not asking the question, how does a sinful person approach a holy God, but how does an average person, how does a you and I, with all of our foibles and weaknesses and dirtiness, ever think of approaching our God? It's like taking off your shoes in someone's home that you honor. Well, imagine trying to do this with a completely unique and different God. That's what the word holy means. Well, here is then where the sacrifices come into play, as we have read in the book of Leviticus. We have several that are mentioned: burnt offerings, the grain offering, which seems to be a poor man's version of the burnt offering, and peace offerings. Now, and these three all seem to be very simple, spontaneous, voluntary offerings of a person in union with Yahweh who wants to simply fellowship with him or renew his dedication or just say thank you, something like that. Noah gets off the ark in chapter 8 of Genesis and does a burnt offering. But the words or the offerings called the sin offering and the trespass offering get our attention now because of the relationship of how to again approach the tabernacle at this point. Again, let's talk about the meaning of words. In Hebrew, the word translated as sin is usually kata, a very common word. We often associate in English sin with morality, but kata is a broader word. It can just mean to fail. So if you throw a stone and miss, you kata. So it can often simply refer to something in a very non-moral or amoral sense. It just means to fail. In fact, notice the kinds of sins that are mentioned in Leviticus when it comes to using a sin or trespass offering. If a person touched a carcass in chapter 5, or went through childbirth in chapter 12, or if a person became leprous in 14, or they had a bodily discharge in chapter 15, notice the question that's being solved here, or the problem that's being solved. It's not, again, how a sinful person goes to God. It's how a person who fails because of their commonness. Notice all these are very common. I'm sure a farmer touched a dead animal every day, possibly. It's part of his job. But how does that kind of person go into his God's home? This is where these two sacrifices do their work. They're not talking about a murderer who needs to have his sins gone. They're talking about an average person already right with God. That's key. He's already in fellowship with Yahweh, but now he wants to go to his house. And that's where now tomorrow let's even talk about words like forgive or atone. These are going to be very specifically used words based on this storyline that we're seeing.